and welcome to the Monday, February 26th Muscatine School District Board of Education work session meeting. Madam Secretary, can you please take roll and help us determine the quorum, please?
Yes. Directors Connard.
Present.
Cooney. Here. DeBeat.
Present.
LaRue.
Present.
Phillips.
Present.
Schneider. And Shore.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Let's all stand up to recite the Pledge of the Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. It's always good to see too many people here in the audience, and we look forward to listen and hear from you and listen to your presentation. With that, I would like also to welcome any media representatives in the audience too. And with that, I will go straight to the Chinese tribe presentation, and I would like to call on Ms. Jennifer Fredley to start and call on her team, please.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. I think the first thing that I need to say is a big thank you to the school board and to Mr. Christopher for granting the approval for us to take this trip, because I know it was a special meeting that had to happen, and it was very quick, but without your support, we would have never been able to do this. So thank you on behalf of all of us that went on that trip, because we have some great things to share with you tonight. And I know you don't want to hear that much from me, so I'm going to allow our chaperones to just kind of give a little brief overview of what maybe they felt about it, and then we have our students here to really highlight their portions of the trip. I will say that tomorrow night, there are several of us, I think 10 total, going to a Chinese festival at the Chinese consulate in Chicago to accept a written letter from President Xi to our school district and our students who went on the trip. We wrote him a letter when we were in China, and a couple of our students, we have one here that was part of the illustration on that letter, and he made specific reference to the dragon that was drawn, and he was very excited, so he has returned a letter, and we're gonna receive that in person tomorrow night, so we're super excited about that. So, without further ado, let's welcome Anne and Aaron and Heidi so they can give, misquote. Yes, so they can at least just tell you one of their favorite things about the trip, and then we'll really have the highlights from our students.
Well, I'm Aaron Smith. I'm a teacher at Muscatine High School. I teach social studies, and I'm going to be greedy, and I'm going to talk about two different things about this trip. The first was watching the kids. A lot of our groups our members hadn't traveled the world, and just seeing the empowerment that this trip gave them. Starting the trip initially, it's like, could you see yourself living in China or another country or going to school there? And it was a lot of no's. I don't know if I could do this. By the end of the trip, you could see gears turning in their heads saying like, oh man, I think I could go do something like this. You know, it's possible for me, which was really neat to see. The other thing I kind of noticed too was just, this is the most globally connected generation ever in history. And even though they're globally connected, they just don't get to experience relationships with other members from other cultures. And just seeing, when we'd go to other schools, the awkwardness at the beginning of the meetings, but by the end of this 2-3 hour session with their Chinese friend or delegate that they paired up with, you could see it was almost like old friends were leaving each other. So it was just neat to see those connections formed with our students, with the students of China.
Okay, I'm Heidi Guo. I'm the Chinese teacher in Muscatine High School. I'm very appreciate all of you, our school board, everybody, because without your supporting, we cannot go, you know, like the January trip. It was amazing and really like let every kid to see the world super different as here. Yeah, and then actually I told them so many things, like even though the language things and the cultural things, but you know, when you go there, it's really everything different and incredible. So they learn a lot, and then they build a relationship between the young kids. We went to the 3 3 different schools, and one already our sister school, so that's amazing, and then we will keep building this relationship, yeah, between us. Yeah, so I hopefully we can have more chance to bring like more people, more kids to go China to see it, because it's really incredible. I believe that's a really special, memorized for everybody. Yes, and then for the teachers will be the same thing, because some of the teachers maybe never been to China. Yeah, so welcome, and maybe you guys are interested to join us next time, and very welcome to go to China with us. Yes.
Hi, my name is Ann Edkin. I was fortunate enough to be chosen to be able to help chaperone the trip. I guess I have a couple of takeaways like Aaron. First, I was just really, really proud of our students, the way that they represented Muscatine High School, the way that they represented our community of Muscatine. They did a phenomenal job. I mean, we took a 17-hour plane ride. We had been traveling for 30 days, and we hit the ground running. I mean, we went to the zoo, we came back. You'll hear all about, they'll go over that. But so being tired on top of experiencing all of these new things coming at them, they did a phenomenal job being ambassadors to China on behalf of our community. And I guess one of the takeaways that I would like to bring to the board is being a chaperone. I was excited to experience China, you know, like all the food, all the language, the culture. I would like you to consider, especially as more trips come up, the amount of work that it takes. It's physically and mentally demanding. Not only, I guess I took personal responsibility for every student that was there, because as a parent of high school students myself, I imagined myself being a parent back here, waiting for word from my student. And we all know that sometimes teenagers aren't the best at communication. And so that's why I started the Polar Steps, so that parents could see exactly what their students were doing. And then it became a part of the community, looked at what we were doing. And there were days when we would have 18-hour days. I looked back at my apps, my exercise apps, and we had no less than 12,000 steps a day. Those were light days. We had upwards to 24,000 steps on the Great Wall day. So it's extremely demanding. A lot of people said, "Oh, enjoy your vacation," and it was work. I mean, it was demanding. So I guess that's just one thing. You know, getting 24 students through multiple security checkpoints at airports and getting them through customs in both countries. And so it was a wonderful experience, but it was work at the same time. But so we thank you as a group. We thank you for the opportunity to go. I think one of the best things for students to do is to experience other cultures. And it's a global world, and what better way can we support and educate our students than to do that globally. So what an opportunity they had for them.
A question for you is, I talked with Dan Stein, and he said next time around, although as chaperones you guys did great, but he said next time around we definitely should have more chaperones just to be able to help because of some of that workload and, participation.
I would strongly agree with that. But I know that it gets into how do we cover for, all of this, and it's a balance and it's a fine line. But I just want to, I wanted to address I guess the stigma out there that, oh, these teachers are just taking a vacation. So, it is work. We had 1 to 6 going through airports, and I wouldn't want any more than 6 to be responsible with that for 6 than that. So.
All right, so as you guys know, we're here to present to you guys our trip to China. My name is Kolos, and I'll be starting off here. All right, so one of the first places we went to in Beijing was the Center for Language Education and Cooperation in Beijing. And when we arrived there was a whole media presentation. We got pictures taken, and we got paired up with a Chinese student. They walked us through, they taught us about the history of China. They had interactive things for us to do to learn about the history of China. And then after that, we would learn more about them, their life, how their school's like compared to ours. And it's really cool to see how alike we are. Even though we're like across the world from each other, it's really cool to see how alike we are. We made letters. I was able to bring some souvenirs home from this place, and we made food with them, and then we were able to eat that. So that was one of the first places we went to. Another place in Beijing we went to was the Great Wall. I mean, you guys all know about the Great Wall. You hear about it, you hear how long it is, but to actually be there and see the true size of it, and then I was fortunate enough in the time we had to make it up to the top and to just look off and see the beautiful city of Beijing. And then you look that way and you turn the other way, and it's just these long mountains where the Great Wall just kind of surrounds it. And it was really amazing and breathtaking to see. And then another place we went to in Beijing was the Forbidden City. This place was, personally, I heard not like a lot about it. I've heard about it, but I didn't hear a lot about it. And we were fortunate enough to have a tour guide when we got there, and she told us all the background, the history of like what the steps meant, what each like kind of house on it was, and how it just kept going on, and you could see all the beautiful sights around it, and you could kind of look over and see the big city of Beijing in the background. And so that was really pretty, and we learned a lot about the history of this Forbidden City and how it came up. Now I'm going to pass it on to Leo Reginator.
Hello, my name is Leo Reginator. So after we got done with the Great Wall and the Forbidden City, we finally got a break from that day, and the next day we went to this school. It was I believe our sister city school, and so we had a good connection with them before we got there, and they like kind of knew about us. And they spent 3 days making, you can see in the middle big picture, they spent 3 days making that picture, which was 47 meters long. And so it was beautiful. And we had a lot of good experiences there. Their school is huge. They had soccer, they had all these sports, hockey, table tennis, they had skiing, they had a ski thing, that was cool. They're really competitive with table tennis. We got to play against some of them, and they're really good. They were a lot younger than us too, and they're super good. It was really cool seeing we got to make Chinese knots there, and it's kind of they're weird to make. And so you have to have a technique to them, and it was a pretty cool experience making those. We went to this garden after, never mind. We went to this garden, and it was all dressed up for the Chinese New Year, which was the dragon. So it had all these big dragons on the walls, and it had kind of this, it was an old city, so before all the other buildings were made around it, it was kind of the older part. And they talked about how this part was owned by this guy, and he kind of expanded it to make this kind of small town area. And there was businesses over there, then there was his house over there, and then he would have people stay in these houses. We had a tour guide that explained the whole thing with us. And we were also with college students, so it was kind of cool talking to them because they were from the United States too. So it was a cool experience with all of them.
I'm Arabella Forneau. I'm a sophomore, and obviously I went on this trip. Great time. In Shanghai, one of the first main places that we visited was the Shanghai Tower, and I think it was just really cool because they every step of the way they explained to us how everything meant. And a main thing that they talked about with the Shanghai Tower was how they all the new architecture that went into building this. They have so much new technology, and all the people that went into building it and designing it to make it really a main part of the city in China and such a big attraction. And it was so nice to, even though we didn't get to visit all of Shanghai, we got to see it all from the top of the tower. And the elevator, it was really cool. So many floors, literally no time at all. And they had a cool light show and everything. And I think it was just really nice to know how much hard work went into it, and we don't have something like that here in Muscatine, but it was just, they were so passionate about it too. The next place that we went was the UN Garden, and it's another, Leo was talking about, another really historical place there in Shanghai, and it was just all of the detail that went into everything, and once again, just really focused on the architecture and how much money and thought went into how things were presented, how much the respect that you had to put into just looking at everything and seeing everything. And we also did some activities after that, and it was nice to see be in a place that other people that were from there got they go there and they visit there and they experience it as well. So it really felt nice to be connected to the actual people that live there every day, and how nice they were to us, welcoming us and trying to teach us about this experience.
Hello, my name is Sienna Stone King, and I'm a freshman. And then, so we went to the Shanghai Discovery Center, and the entire time I got paired with one girl, and I had an amazing time with her. And I would say personally my favorite part was getting to learn the different foods they cooked for Chinese New Year's. And I had a really great time, and it was kind of funny because by the time we'd gone there, I had learned how to make some of the traditional foods about 3 times. So one of the chefs asked me if I was Chinese. And then also we got to do some paper making, if you look at Miss Edkin up there. And that was also really interesting because, we got to have frames. But honestly, I had a great time getting to just talk to my student, and connect with her and just see how does she live her day-to-day life and how do I live mine. And honestly, I would say one of my big takeaways was even though we live so far apart from each other, we can learn so much from each other. And then this was the cruise ship of the Light of Shanghai. So if you can see the city in the background, it was such a beautiful view, and I had an amazing time. And I know a lot of students took a lot of pictures. And me and Cole both said speeches. And another cool part was getting to talk to the college students, and see their experiences and compare and, see what everybody learned. And honestly, just talk to them about, what maybe we want to do with this opportunity in the future. But yeah, it was an amazing trip, and honestly, anyone who wants to go on it, I would completely recommend it because it's a once-in-a-life opportunity.
So I just want to bring Cole here just for a second, because if you look up here, so we put this certificate here presented to Cole. So throughout the trip, we had a lot of Chinese representatives with us, and they asked us, they said, we've identified some real leaders in your group. And President Xi invited 50,000 American youth to come to China, specifically Muscatine students. And so we were awarded certificates 1 through 24 of those 50,000. And so they wanted to identify one of our students, because we did have 3 other college groups there, but they wanted to identify one of our students who really, really stood out in the whole 9-day trip. And they came to us and said, we would like to honor this for Cole. What do you think? And all of us chaperones were in agreement that we really felt like Cole deserved that. So he got the certificate. I put it in a red box up there. The kids made the presentation, but I added this today because I was like, we have to talk about this because it's such a unique experience, and it'll be, in the annuals of China Forever, that Cole Los was our #1 student in the 15,000 student exchange. And so that is his certificate, and each other student has a certificate with their number on it. And we were just so impressed. And then at the end, Cole and Sienna both made a speech in front of this boat that you see there of, I don't know, hundreds of people. And it was a great night. It was a great way to end our trip. So we were really, really proud of all of our kids. But it was just exciting. It was exciting for us to realize we had this great honor to have the #1 student in the 50,000 exchange. So we're really
All right, so from my understanding, you guys may have some questions. All right.
Can you tell us how your group of students were chosen?
So we were grouped up with, we had 4 chaperones, right? And so there was 24 of us students, so 6 would just go with each student.
Right, but how
yeah.
were you group chosen from the whole student body, Muscatine?
So, for Miss Kuo made a sign-up sheet, and if you had a passport, you could basically go if you had a passport. So first was the Chinese students that she sent to them first. I'm not in Chinese personally, and so once people stopped doing it, I got the chance to do my sign-in and everything before because I think they were only at 20 or 19 people before me and 4 or 5 other people that were not in Chinese got to go.
Yep. Yeah, please.
Actually, I got a phone call from the Chinese consulate because I have built a good relationship with them, even though I came from Taiwan. Yeah, but I just focus on education and cultural things. I don't want to talk about the political things. That's not my bag. Bye. So anyway, so I got a phone call from them, and 10 days before this trip. It was very rushed, and then during a snow day. So I think, oh my God, first of all, I didn't know that's from, we be invited from the government. I have no idea. They didn't tell me that. I just know, okay, we got a free trip. I said, oh, wow, that's amazing. I want to do that. I just notice all that. So I make a form, a Google form, and then ask the kids who has the passport, because you have to you need it. If you don't have, without the passport, you cannot go out of the U.S., so you can't. Yeah, so first of all, I cannot do any selection since it was so rushed, 10 days, how can I do? Yeah, so I just ask all my Chinese students because I know they learn pretty well. That's why Cole got a first certificate, because he did a speech in Chinese, in China. Yes. So he did a great job, and I know most of people my kids can do it, my students, but some people, their passport expires, some they never get a chance to go abroad. It's really sadly things, yeah. But I just try my best to get most of my Chinese students, I can pull out them and ask their parents, are they agree with that, because that's really important for them. Yeah, so I try my best to connect to them during the snow day. It was a snow day. Oh my God, so many snow days. I still working at home. I work remotely. Yeah, so it was pretty nicely, but pretty rushed things, everything. Yeah, so and then contact to the school board, and I totally almost forgot I need to get a school board approval. I almost forgot it. Oh my gosh. It was the last things, oh gosh, it's popped up, but that is why I say I really appreciate everybody, can agree with us and give us this opportunity, because this is really amazing things for the students. Yeah, they learn so many things. And all the kids, they told me, why you cut it down the days? Because in the beginning, actually China told me they can do 15 days. I said, no, it's too long for the kids. No way, we can't. So I cut it down a week, or around a week, yeah. So that is why we did this trip. But, it's still really fantastic things for them. And they love that, and they learn a lot. And that's for their entire life. They won't forget it. That's a really big thing. So go back to the selection. So anyway, first of all, some people take a Chinese class, and then they have passport. I contact to them. And after that, I noticed about, okay, I still have few spots. And then so I just open, run to Mr. Castle's office and then ask him, do you have some idea, please? You know, there's a few spots I still can take the kids, and I don't want to waste those spots. Yeah, so we contact to the Key Club, a different club, a Model UN class, yes, and then bring some of the good kids, even though I don't know them, but I believe they are good because, you know, with the teacher's promise. So, so that's why I don't know, in the beginning, I don't know Leo, I don't know Arabella. Yeah, I still, sometimes I cannot pronounce her name really well. Yeah, but she's a really, really good student, both of them, so they're doing a great job in this trip too. Yeah, but not only them, they have, we got 6 people who are not taking Chinese, yeah. And then, as I know, right now, Leo gonna take Chinese next year, so, yes. And then a lot of people, a lot of kids in my class, I still have a connection with them every day, so they told me they really want to go abroad into China. And then I really get a chance. I will tell them more details, and they can go probably like a month, you know, just 1 month is good too, or 3 months, or some people want to do like half year. They have different opportunities for our school students here. So that's a very cool thing. Yes, and I do my best to give them like a scholarship things. So far, all the trip here, the cost is 0.
It's amazing.
Yes, okay.
You know, it's one thing to learn the foreign language, and it's another to go experience it over there. So through all of your studies, now that you've been over there, has your studies helped you, or how did they prepare you properly for that activity, or other actions that should be taken in the studies to help you?
Yeah, so in class we learned quite a bit of their culture. So coming up, when we went there, what was coming up was their Chinese New Year. And so it was very helpful to be able to go there, and you see all these banners, lanterns, everything so decorated. And so to be able to go there and see and understand what that's for and how important this celebration is to them. And then once you get there, you learn a little bit more about it. And then they were saying before, I gave a few speeches, and I gave them in Chinese. So from being able to learn the language, I would just type down a speech on my phone, run it through with Miss Kuo, and then I just practice it, and I'd go and I'd give that speech. So definitely from learning, it was very helpful to go and kind of learn a little bit more with that background knowledge.
How long have you been in Chinese class?
So I started Chinese in my 8th grade year. I'm a sophomore right now, so I'm in Chinese 3. So this is my 3rd year.
This is my first group of
Middle school.
junior high.
Yep.
Kids, they are the first.
Yep.
Anybody else would like to ask? If not, I would like to say a few words too. Just sitting and listening to you, I cannot help it but to say that you guys became an ambassador for our school district. And I want you to continue to think about what you did. What you did has a lot of value. It adds a lot to you and to your future. I'm sure that trip gonna affect you for a long time, right? And I'm hoping that our school district, we are really lucky here in Muscatine to be in a community where President Xi himself visited us in the 80s, and he created what they call the old friendship. On top of that, Sarah Landy is someone that we always appreciate everything that she did for our community, and also in particular for this relationship. So thank you for sharing your story with us. Keep talking about it, because again, you need to get other students to be more engaged and have the same experience that you had, again, by traveling outside. It's not easy to think about, out of the sudden, maybe I never had a chance to leave United States, and now I'm in a foreign land learning a lot based on that. For those of you who went again with them as chaperone, thank you. And I do agree with you. I led many international trips, including student trips from MCC to different countries. And as I agree with you, people tend to think, oh, well, you are going on a vacation. They don't know that you are, I would say you will have less work here being in the United States than when you travel outside. So I do agree with you. It's very intensive work. Thank you for doing that. You make us all proud. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have one more question.
All right.
So, how does the food, Chinese food in China compare to Chinese food in Muscatine?
It was a lot better. It was definitely, even just eating it, you felt healthier. I mean, and yeah, it's a lot of noodles, meat, dumplings. It's really good.
I know for a fact that there's some weird stuff that I tried. I tried fish eyes. I tried that. You told me to. So like they would give you a whole fish. Like normally you get those like fish sticks or whatever they get, but like it was kind of weird. You saw their face expressions like of our students that were there, seeing the whole fish like kind of laid out in front of you, and like it was kind of weird for them, and I guess they weren't used to that or something like that, and so they were kind of like grossed out. But once like you got them to try it, they really liked it, and it was.
Leo, that's part of the experience, right? That's very important. And you know, one of the things that perhaps maybe I failed to mention is that how busy you are now presenting to different groups. Because, you know, I saw some of you already participating and presenting, and you tonight. And so keep up the good work.
Yeah, since I got back, I think I've done like 5 more interviews. So it's been a fun experience, though, talking to a lot of people about it.
Thank you. Thank you for spending some time with us to share your story with us. Thank you.
One of the things I want to just follow up on, too, is again, thank you to our chaperones for all of your efforts in getting our students there. We met with them last week to talk a little bit about the experience, but also we know there will be some more trips and some opportunities moving forward. Obviously, this one, there wasn't a lot of runway to get this off the ground, and so, but how do we do, you know, a little bit more planning this next time so we know there's an opportunity in April. We have students from the Chinese class that would be able to participate. But again, moving forward, what are those criteria as we put that out? Are we looking at some kind of cultural competence, some of that global education before they go so they're prepared as they can be? And the same thing for the staff as we look, you know, we'll put out kind of an interest form. Obviously, passports are required, but being really clear what you heard tonight, this is work. So on top of these individuals keeping track of these, you know, they're little ducklings all the time, right? But they're also, you know, they have families at home and they have work at home that's still happening. And so they're getting up before the kids to work on those things. And then once the day hits, you're go, right? And then you're doing cleanup at the end of the day as well. So they put in a ton of time. It is a huge responsibility. So I'm very thankful for them, but also really helping us understand what's required and what we need to make sure we continue to provide for our students to make sure they have this kind of incredible opportunity moving forward. So we'll continue to bring you those things. We also know there's been a lot of interest from other groups in China to bring more students over. But one of the things we've talked about is we need to really narrow that down for us and say, hey, I think we can do one in the fall, in the spring, and potentially in the summer. That's it. That's our capacity for what we can provide as a staff. And again, Heidi has put in even more time because of the relationship she has with translating and working through, you know, all of those intergovernmental relationships. And so a special thank you to Heidi for all your effort in this as well.
I went back and met with some people, and they offered us 200 full more scholarships, 200 for students over the next 5 years. But that's just kind of, what they've come up with, and Heidi says there's more happening and all behind the scenes. And so I think, we're just kind of getting our heads wrapped around that. And, but, we just wanted you guys to know that. And I asked Heidi, I said, when you took this job at Susan Clark Junior High, I said, did you know the Chinese Muscatine connection? And she said, I had no idea. And so, so yes, special thanks to her. I just wanted to let you guys know that.
Thank you. Thank you. Truly a great story to share. Moving forward with our agenda, we move into the MCSD behavior protocol updates with Becky Witcher, please.
A bit of a transition. All right, well, I am just back with you again to kind of give you an update. A couple months ago, we had talked about putting together a collective document that would provide consistency amongst all of our buildings. It would provide clarity of what steps are taken and by whom they are taken when we have behavior incidents or inappropriate behaviors that occur. We talked about creating a system that is equitable amongst all buildings and creating this a progressive system of discouraging and then responding effectively to inappropriate student behaviors. So you all have electronic access to this document. We are calling it our MCSD behavior protocol. This is a district-wide protocol. So I'm just going to briefly kind of share with you what it looks like. Tab 1 is the purpose and definition. So you can see there we have defined what a minor, what major, and what serious is. We have defined that out. This document has been vetted with administrators. It has also been shared with our teachers and staff. So this is
Becky, can I just interrupt real
Yep.
quickly? I apologize, but also if you go to some of the legislation that was passed last year, and we had been waiting, if you recall, in the fall for some guidance from the state to implement that new legislation. So once we got that legislation, the state defined level 1, level 2, level 3, or they indicated level 1, level 2, level 3. There was no definition. So I also want you, I think it's important to know that this document also aligns to all of that and to the law. We define then what level 1, 2, 3 is for us. So again, there's alignment to any of the laws passed last year around that.
I'm just going to keep rolling the next tab. This is what we're calling our guidance tab. So basically it has a description of our event types. This is in alignment with what the state of Iowa requires for documentation when we look at descriptors. So it's the descriptor, it gives a definition of what we're talking about, and then it has an incident level. For example, the incident level is either a minor, major, or serious. And like to follow up with Clint, that's kind of that level 1, level 2, level 3. And when we talked about creating some type of guidance, it needed to be progressive. And so that's where that level 1, 2, 3 comes into place. And then we have on the far right, those are the range of responses. So you can see when this incident occurs, what happens afterwards. You might notice there is some writing in black font, and then there's some in red. Red means required. So the guidance tab goes through all of the event types. If you click on the next tab, it says suspension required. Basically, this tab is similar to the guidance, but it's just highlighting the behaviors that occur that require some type of suspension. So red is required. So I'm just looking, for example, at the very first one. If there was abusive or inappropriate language, the administrator deemed based on the evidence of what happened and the definition that this was either major or serious. In red, this is what absolutely happens. The principal contacts the legal guardian. There is a conference with the student. If you jump down, ISS or OSS, 1 to 2 days. That, our administrators have discretion on what that would look like based on the incident. And then the administrator will follow up with all relevant personnel in order to ensure effective communication. That could be the classroom teacher, it could be a whole slew of teachers, but that administrator is key with the follow-up. Now, the things that are in black, these things, our principals, our administration, they have discretion if they feel that individualized instruction of the student needs to occur, if there needs to be a loss of a privilege or the timeout in the office or other things, they are able to use those things when responding to the type of consequence. But what is in red is required. Now, the suspension tab, you notice that there's 2 tabs. One says K6 and one says 712. Currently, they are both the same, except on the suspension required 712 tab, our administrative team, on the very first one, they determined that the principal is not going to contact the legal guardian or a conference. The elementary felt that that needed to be a required step. Other than that, right now, both of those are exactly the same. And we kind of talked about this. We've been talking with this with our principals over several months. Does appropriate consequences, do they look different at a secondary level than an elementary level? Well, through our discussion and through our scenarios, and obviously we talk about what happens and kind of role play and think it out, we kind of came to determine they're really the same. We went ahead and gave each one of them a tab. So as we know, this is a working document. We talk about this at our principal meetings. We talk about this at our administrative meetings. This is something that is a working document. We keep it at the forefront. We routinely hold discussions about behavior and inappropriate consequences. So this is something that we take very seriously. So could there be changes possibly on those? They could. So the next tab is the bus matrix, and this is just working through consequences for inappropriate behavior when it happens on our buses with transportation. And working with Mr. Nienhaus and our busing staff, this is something that we had in place, but we really hadn't solidified where we had it consistency amongst all levels. So we're excited to have this as clarity moving forward. And then currently, the last tab, this is just kind of a helpful resource. So this kind of shares a continuum of responses and some teaching practices. So if, and some strategies, and what are some next steps? So it's broken into teaching practices, relational practices, and then some proactive and responsive practices. So for example, if there's an incident and we come up with like, hey, a relational practice, let's do some banking time. Well, banking time, that's a strategy. Well, what is banking time? So we put down the strategy and then we put down the description of what is that. So these are proactive strategies. You might hear the R word, restorative practices. So these strategies are restoring, whether it's a fractured relationship or something else. So they're positive strategies, and it kind of gives our principals, along with our staff that are working with kids, some possible strategies and next steps. And we also kind of did a couple things, how do we fit these strategies into a schedule? So just another kind of self-help. We've partnered with Till 360 in providing some professional development and developing relationship strategies with students. So that's kind of where that reference came from. And then the top one is conversations. We get a lot of feedback from our staff, from our associates, from our teachers. When this happens, what do I say? What are the conversation starters with kids to problem solve with students? And so basically kind of put that together on just kind of some self-help things that our teachers and our administrators can use. Because when these incidences occur, there's always a follow-up after. And so we just want to make sure that what happens, we're consistent, and what we say we're going to do, we're doing, and we're following through with it. So again, working document, I feel our administrators have been very positive. They're using this document a lot. I can tell that they're using it because they're always on it. I can always see, obviously, our other staff. So this is not a secret. So this has been shared at all buildings, at all levels, our staff. So they all know that we've got a set of, of protocols that we're following when certain things happen. So I just wanted to bring it back to you. In one of our presentations a couple months, we kind of had a little screenshot, just a little teaser for you. But I feel as an administrative team, we're pretty proud of something, and that this brings some clarity onto who does what and when and how, and just all those in between. So we just wanted to bring it back and circle back with the board, so now you too have access with this information.
I have a couple questions. First of all, does any of this relate to people that end up becoming substitute teachers? I think of it because I just heard from somebody that's going to be going to the classes to do that, which is great. But then I also remember with the classes I went to, and of course nothing like this was there.
Sure.
So
Sure.
Is that something that is going to, be a part of their plan of action? And then also, along with that, for the bus matrix, because you mentioned that you have the practices and preventions. Are they going to be able to have some of those prevention style things also, training or anything along those lines for either one of those areas?
Yeah, I think you've brought up two really good questions. First question, this is a public document. So we have associates that are substitute for teachers or paras, so they can have access to this. We will have to determine, is this something that we put in our student handbook? And then I'm hoping that that is something that's kind of what we created this, so this isn't a secret. So then therefore our guest teachers, whether they're in the classroom or associates or anywhere else, they too would have access. And then you brought up a second question, and not just for our transportation, but for all of our teachers, PD around this. And I think our administrative team, if they were here, they would ditto the fact that, we have to stay on top of this. And, when we're having staff meetings, let's role play some of these scenarios, because sometimes when some disruptive behavior happens, it comes quick, and we need to role play these in scenarios and talk through these. So I think not just with our transportation folks, but with all of our teachers talking about this, what questions do you have? Hey, let's role play some things. We have people in place that can, deliver great PD on de-escalation strategies and things like that. So I feel that this is a good tool that can start conversations and can maybe clear up maybe if there's some misinformation on who does what, or this happens, and at this, attendance center, this is what happened. At this attendance center, this is what happened. So now we have something that's clear, and it's pretty user-friendly, and it's easy to follow. So hopefully that will clear up any of that inconsistencies that we might have had, beforehand.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can see several of the conversations that we've had over the past couple of months too reflected in this. So I know it's nice to know too that if we're at the board table, that other people are having some of the same feedback and comments too in your meetings and things, because I think that it adds clarity to it. And so much of this has been in here, but then it's like you bolded something and it's like, oh, there, so that is helpful, I think, if you're looking in maybe a moment of panic or something like that, where you're like, oh, what do we do? And so that's really good to see. The last page, because I go back to, of course, what is our role here too, and how can we make sure that you didn't just create all of this for it to not be worth your time, or that it not be able to be executed in the building. So as we're looking at personnel options or what needs to be in place, and as we're talking about budgets and things like that, do you have all of the people in place to actually implement and execute this plan and to respond? Do our administrative teams have the time to do the investigation that it's called for? What is that? I'm just spitballing questions. I don't want answers right now, but as these things maybe are done more consistently and you find out that there's a void or something like that, or we need, we have CBAs and we have instructional coaches and everyone, mentors for new teachers, and I'm looking at this last tab or slide where we talk about what those practices and strategies can be, and so I'm thinking, how is that modeled and when across the district, and do you really have that manpower to do it? So I guess just as you see it used more consistently, are we really equipped, and how can we help if not?
And you brought up a good point, because I think this last tab, this is just the start. There's many more things. This is just, this was just a start. What I can tell you, our administrative team is very, very, very good at voicing what they need and why they need it, and here's the data that shows that. So when you say, hey, do we have people in place, they would let us know if we don't or if we do, and so they're very good at sharing that so far. I feel that we do have people, boots on the ground in all of our buildings that can help execute and help our administrative team as well adhere to all of these.
Becky, I have just a quick question. It's a great document to have, right? But are you planning to perhaps have a PD sessions to also train everybody on what's in this document? Because that's important. The document is great, the information in it, amazing information, but it's important also to do some training so that everybody, and I mean everybody, really, to know exactly what's in that document.
And I think that's a good point, John, because I think two different buildings need different things, and I think we have to differentiate our PD, so we're meeting the needs at each building and what they need. We've encouraged principals to sit down and, talk through these things so they find out, hey, we could really use a little bit more information on this or that. But I think there's a lot of learning that occurs in all of this, and I think too, there's a lot on our administrators' plates. There is a lot, and when you have majors and serious things that arrive, you have to have a plan that you feel comfortable with and that you have to have knowledge and what we need to follow. So I think the more we can get this in front of people, the more comfortable we feel, and then the more support we have. So PD around this, yes, it will be a continuation. I feel like we talk about behavior a lot and have for several years. So I think this will help us maybe dial in on maybe our next steps, what we need, if that's maybe helpful. But yeah, I definitely like your suggestion.
Thank you.
Along with that, then too, if I may, families are part of this too. And as you say, it's a document that is, online or whatever, but they don't necessarily look at that until it is time at a, and so maybe what is a communication factor that we are able to bring some of this at a point in time to families so they know, because I'll give you a quick example, is, yes, it says about like with the tier 1 and what happens to, like they say, the bully, but the person that's being bullied, doesn't because of privacy laws and stuff, doesn't necessarily get to know what happens to the bully, but yet at the same time, it could probably help if they understand the process, that it does. And including as in like what kind of after time is done with, like, say, the child that has been bullied. Do you just put them back in the classroom, or is there counseling and stuff like that? So in other words, to help the families to understand some of those things.
Well, and I feel, Karen, I feel that our families and our parents would appreciate this, because it's not just something that the principal decided, well, your kid, 2 days. There's something here that we can follow, which is always very helpful. So.
And I was just going to add, I do think it's going to be part of an ongoing conversation, right? As much work has gone into this, I can tell you there are already probably things as administrators look at this as situations arise that just need to be adjusted, right? As soon as you lay everything out, something will happen that doesn't fit neatly into one of these boxes. So what do we do with that? And we have conversations about that. And so again, I think that was part of our, part of my push with principals is, like, go ahead, let's start using this, right? We're not gonna, like, this is not written in concrete, right? We need to get something moving. We'll make changes as things come up, but it does provide a lot of clarity for everyone. And so I do see this as a document that will be linked into our student handbook so that everyone's on the same page. This is what it is. This is how we're leveraging this information.
I do have one question about the BLE, well, I guess two questions. Is the BLE form
Behavior log entry.
perfect? Is that at every building the same?
Yes, and so in Power School, we have what's called a behavior log entry, and so when the incident occurs, they go in, click on the student, and it says behavior log entry, and that's where they document what happened and all that kind of stuff.
That's
I
even
know.
better.
And there's so many, and I think we're trying not to throw out all these
Oh, no.
BLEs and blah, blah, blah,
You
because.
have it in here. I like
Okay,
that,
well,
'cause
okay,
I'm always like,
all
what's the
right.
acronym? That wasn't
There
my
will be a
question
quiz
this
later.
time.
Yeah, you bet, yeah.
For the second question, then, on this front page here, it says that parents will be notified in every instance where a BLE is created. So, but does that need to be altered then if we're not going to do that for the minor, for the?
Point me again where you're seeing that. Again,
Well,
this was.
So, yep, that's okay. The parents should be notified in every instance where the BLE is created. That's just on that first log entry reporting part. But then we changed it after talking to the 712, remember, that we're not going to contact parents on that first one. So I don't know if that's just an inconsistency then that maybe
Yes,
just
because
after needs to be changed.
I think they felt, when you kind of look at, from an elementary perspective and a secondary, I don't want to say any inappropriate words correct right now, but we had some examples of maybe some words that at the high school would be said, and it might be a little wrong to call mom and dad and say,
Yeah, they'd stop
you're a
calling
little
me.
blah, 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 whatever. And so they felt that, calling so anyway, so that's when we kind of defined, well, at a major or serious, the language and the nonverbal, the gesturing, there's a sexual language, nonverbal, and then it goes into possibly not limited to hate speech.
Right.
So that's kind of, but yes, elementary, that when they say a naughty word,
Yeah.
there's going to be a contact, because then we have documentation that.
So the parent will still be contacted in high school. They'll just receive that BLE then?
Well,
or no?
Well, maybe so the parent doesn't receive a BLE.
Oh.
At all.
Right, we don't, yes, so we don't, so a behavior log entry is what the administrator will do to document the event. So it goes into Power School. This happened, such and such, the action. We call it a behavior log entry.
Okay. So you didn't misspeak. I just read it. So it's on the purpose and documentation requirements on that first tab. And it's like the fourth little section where it says during major and minor incident reports become part of the student's permanent record. And then bolded, it says parents should be notified in every instance where a BLE is created. So maybe that just.
I think, so again, this is one of those areas that we continue to refine this, and there may be some changes to that. I think there were some minor incidents of language at the high school and junior high that may not have the same kind of contact that you would at the elementary level. However, even looking at here, we have a major serious on suspension required 712. Well, if we're suspending in school or out of school, parents are going to be notified, right? But we didn't bold that, but they would be, right? So
They would be,
again, I think there's some pieces in this we've been kind of working through that'll probably get adjusted as we move
Well,
forward.
and I just see this as an accountability piece too, to all of us. And so I wouldn't want to overpromise anything or then be like, oh, well, yeah, but, so maybe just strike it out. I don't know. it was just something I noticed.
Sure.
So if I thought I was going to be notified in every instance and then I wasn't, which I think is justifiable, I would then be focused on something different, that I wasn't notified. So that's it, but.
Yes, I don't want you to get me wrong on, like my questions that I have, because I do understand it's still a working documentation.
Yeah.
And because I am very impressed at what you have put together here at this point. And I know it took a lot to get here. So we just want to be able to see what we can do to help you along the way.
And I think it's important that you as a school board are aware of that we have such protocols like this. So when an incident does occur, then you can use this as a guide, or like, well, we have a procedure in place, we have a system and things like that. So I think we would appreciate that too, as well.
We've got your back.
Okay.
Any other question for Becky?
Great,
Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Great work. Thank you. So moving forward, the next item on our agenda is our superintendent updates.
Said I would briefly update you on just kind of where we're at from a legislative standpoint. Obviously some of the big topic has been the AEA and the legislation around that. I will tell you there's a Senate bill and there's a House bill. I did have the opportunity the other week with a few other superintendents to meet with the governor in Davenport, and at that time, she shared information, more kind of what she saw as the concerns around the AEA. We had a few legislators there, and from that conversation, I would say my feel on this right now is the House bill around the AEA is probably closer to where the governor's at right now. So when you see the Senate and House, those different files, I feel like they're probably moving more towards the House side, but again, we'll see how that all gets finally nailed down. But I will say it sounds like the move is to kind of slow this down, to do a little more of a year of study, to get an external group, independent group to come in and kind of analyze the AEAs, but special education in general across the state. And then kind of use those recommendations to make some more changes as we move forward. On the House side, it really begins to look at no changes for next year. So we're just going to keep things in place as they are now, do some of that study. Then as we move into 25, special ed funding would come to the districts, but we'd be required to continue to use that money with the AEA, right? So all those special education services, the staffing, all of that would stay in place. And then the other two, so that's one of the big buckets for the AEAs. The other is educational services and media services. And essentially the media services in 25, the districts would get 100% of those funds and then would have some discretion in how they use them. And then we'd get, I think, funds stay the same with the AEA for ed services in that year 25, and then in 26, we would get 100% of the funds and could use them with the AEA or with any agency that we saw fit to use. So again, we'll see how that kind of shakes out between the Senate bill and the House bill. Right now, the House has passed a 3% SSA. We do not have one for the Senate yet. They passed a bill, but there was no number attached to it. The governor was at 2.5%. So again, hopefully because the House passed the 3%, the Senate starts working with that number. Certainly as we get into the budget conversation here, that helps us. The higher that number is, the more that helps us. So a lot of things yet to happen. I will say that in general, though, even talking with some folks at the AEA, I think there are some good conversations happening right now. So, up until this point, if you said exactly how every dollar that flows from the district to the AEAs are spent, I couldn't tell you exactly, right? Now we're having more of those conversations, which I think is good. That is an important piece. But I do think the AEAs are a critical component of how we serve students more equitably across the whole state. And certainly people's experience in different AEAs across the state has been different. So, you know, again, I think having more of these open conversations about how the system works and looking to find ways to improve that is important. Certainly there's, I think there's been some positive pieces about the teacher pay components of that. That's separated out in the House bill. So hopefully, again, how that all will function, we're still kind of waiting to hear on that, which will impact some of our budget pieces. But I think separating those two pieces, because again, I think there was some strong support for that, that teacher pay piece as well. I know there's been some discussion, because initially the governor's recommendation was $50,000 minimum for starting pay. And again, some of the bills look like they're going to transition into that, so it wouldn't start necessarily right away at $50,000. I think, I can't remember if it's the Senate bill or the House bill, starts at $46,500, then goes to $50,000 the next year. So just give a little more time to build up to that as we move forward. So again, good conversations. A lot can change yet. We're still hoping, as you'll hear from Tom here very shortly, that they establish that SSA. That is an important piece of our budget. And right now with that unknown is a little problematic. But again, that could still, we could know that by the end of this week yet. Could be several more weeks yet, hard to say. So any questions about, again, lots of legislation out there. We'll continue to monitor those funnels. We'll try to continue to forward any of the UEN information to you so you can kind of see where things are at. Any questions about that?
I just wanted to say thank you, Clint, for taking a little bit of a lead with that and going and meeting with the governor, with Davenport and others. So that's very well appreciated.
The other good piece with that conversation, so one of the governor's focus, besides the AEA, has been on early literacy and on reducing chronic absenteeism statewide. Those are focus areas of us as well. But in that, being able to have that conversation with the governor to say, hey, listen, we want to focus on chronic absenteeism. We have been doing it. We've been making a difference. One of the challenges with that has been open enrollment. Now people can open enroll at any time of the year, right? And so we know as some of the pressures come on with attendance and we start having these conversations, they're open enrolling to L&M, and then they get into some attendance issues there, and then they're going to an online program, then they're going to try homeschool, and then they end up back with us and we're starting the whole process over again. So there was some recognition from the legislators and the governor that if attendance is going to be a priority for us as a state, we need to make some adjustments. So there is a bill out there that would adjust open enrollment and reset that March 1st deadline to apply for open enrollment. There's still good cause measures. So if a student, you know, there's certain requirements, if there's bullying, if there's other things, they can still be approved for that. But it helps us kind of control that a little bit better, and then giving an opportunity for us to say no if there's somebody that has chronic absenteeism. So again, there was at least some openness to doing some things with that. So again, it was a good opportunity to have that conversation.
Any question for Clint? Thank you, Clint. Thanks for the updates. Moving forward, we'll move into the 2024-25 budget presentations with Tom. Tom is ready for that.
All right. I don't know if I want to say save the best for last, but I'm used to being the last one on the agenda. It's all right. Okay. So we're going to start off. First of all, I want to point out I did put this on your desk. This is a chart I gave you all last year. There's another copy. This is the revenue sources and allowable expenditures document. Please refer to this anytime you have questions, or even if maybe you get questions from the community, it would be a good thing to have in front of you. It really kind of explains the different uses of the funds that school districts get. So, and then it specifically tells you the things that can come out of those funds. All right, so our agenda is going to be, as you see here, we're going to go through these slides and then talk about the new law changes. We're going to go over a kind of a 5-year comprehensive financial planning model that we use, talk about a couple key financial indicators that we have, and then the budget guarantee resolution, and then kind of touch on our self-funding health and dental insurance that we have, and then what our next steps are. So you can ask questions along the way. You can save them for the end. That's fine. There's about 36 slides that I want to get through. So, and the comprehensive financial planning model does have some assumptions in there. So I'll kind of go over those as we get to those slides. So the first thing I want to do is just show you a short video. ISFIS, which we all subscribe to, everybody here, the Iowa School Finance Information Services, they put out a video every month about a finance topic, and this month happened to be about the new law changes. So I just thought it was a really good, less than 5-minute video that we can watch, and then we'll continue on. So.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the February 2024 5x5. 5 topics about Iowa and school finance, all in about 5 minutes. Every episode, we use the words in our name as an outline for the content. Because all the changes, the certified budget process is here, and a ton of great questions from the field, we're going to change things up a bit. So this month, it's all going to be about the certified budget. We hope you find this a helpful guide through the process, which now requires 2 public hearings. Public hearing 1, which must occur March 25th or later, and public hearing 2, which must occur April 30th or sooner. Every episode of 5x5, we like to talk about something Iowa-related. In this episode, the I in Iowa stands for making that initial maximum property tax decision by March 15th. You'll need to make sure that you've completed the aid and levy input, the long-term debt schedule, and the proposed tax notice in the DOM budget system, as these are the sections that impact your property taxes. Of course, you can have the whole budget done, but these are the ones at an absolute minimum that have to be done to set the maximum property taxes the district plans on levying in the upcoming year. The proposed tax notice section has the new sections where a district enters a narrative for the reasons the property taxes increase. Don't forget to fill that out. You'll need to set a time and date for the first public hearing. The first public hearing has to occur March 25th or later. If you've got a board practice of setting your public hearings at an earlier meeting, include in that planning now. Well, every episode we cover something school-related. This episode, the S in school, stands for the county auditor sending out taxpayer statements. Your county auditor will pull the information from the DOM budget system March 15th and produce a taxpayer statement that will be mailed to all residents on March 20th. In this statement, it will contain the total property tax levy of the district for the upcoming year, along with comparisons to the prior year. The statement will contain information not just from the taxpayer's school district, but also the county and city if applicable. Also from the DOM system, as part of this, your district will publish the public hearing notice for the first hearing 10 to 20 days prior to public hearing number 1. No later than the day the notice is published, you'll also need that proposed tax notice put in the district's website and social media platforms. Well, every episode we cover something finance related. In this episode, the F in finance stands for first public hearing. Remember that first public hearing must occur March 25th or later. Remember, it's a public hearing to take comment. It's not a public debate, and residents can provide information either in writing or orally. Now, you can have multiple meetings on that same calendar day, but you do have to close that public hearing and then start a new meeting with a new agenda and minutes. Now, you might want to review your public hearing time limits if you have them in board policy. And I would be a little bit cautious about scheduling another meeting right on the heels of the first one, assuming that, like all budget public hearings, no one's going to show up. Well, what happens if 100 people show up and want to speak and talk about the proposed budget? So it is a reminder that each resident of the school district got a mailing with the information, so you should plan accordingly from a timelines perspective. Well, every episode we like to highlight something information related, and well, this episode, the I in information stands for incorporating input and making final decisions. The district will need to set the public hearing set the date of public hearing 2 no later than April 30th, but no sooner than after public hearing 1. Public hearing 2 is a normal budget hearing that we've always done with all the same requirements. The budget year and re-estimated worksheets are going to need to be completed, and any final adjustments to property tax rates will need to be made. After public hearing 1, the total property taxes may not be increased, but individual levies may be adjusted up or down so long as total property taxes are not greater than the public hearing 1 amount. The final distribution of levies and spendings is what will be included in the notice for public hearing 2. The notice requirements for public hearing 2 are also 10 to 20 days prior to the public hearing, but this one is not required to be posted on the district's website. Finally, every episode we talk about something service-related. This episode, the S in service stands for the second public hearing and one last chance to lower property taxes. The second public hearing should occur April 30th or sooner, and make sure that you pay attention to the publication timelines are followed. And then even though the second public hearing sets the final proposed property taxes for the district, they're really not final until Department of Management makes all final budgeting adjustments that impact property taxes and incorporate all legislative and code changes. Districts will be able to see the impact of these adjustments from Department of Management, usually in May or early June, and districts will have one final decision of whether to accept the proposed property taxes final by DOM or reduce any individual levies the district has the ability to reduce. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of 5 by 5. If you have any...
Okay, so that was a short video. You may have been thinking you were hearing some terms you don't recognize. That's okay, because the main thing is just learning about the 2 public hearings that you have to have. So in summary here, we have, we have to set our maximum property tax dollars by March 15th. Okay, and with that property tax statement is going to come out from the county auditor regarding, as property tax payers, we will get that for all 3 county, city, and school, and that notice will be posted on our website and social media. We're going to publish that public hearing notice, and then we're going to have that public hearing. I am proposing that, I think I've said this in a past meeting, because of the timing of when our meeting is in March. We don't have a second meeting in March, and then we have our meeting in April. Chances are we're going to have a special meeting. It makes sense to have the public hearing number 1 as that special meeting, and I would propose that we have that on the 25th of March. This PowerPoint says after March 25th, but it is 25th or after, and then just always having it maybe the Monday after the 25th of March in the future, so that we know that there's going to be that public hearing number 1 on that Monday. As far as the time goes, we need to decide that or come to a consensus if 5 o'clock works, 6 o'clock, but we'll have to talk about that yet. And then, because, as Clint was referring to, SSA is not set. That's 1/2 of our number that we need to know. And because of that, we'll have an opportunity by April 8th to probably refine that property tax rate before we certify the budget. So for now, maximum property tax dollars is what would go into that to the county auditor. If we knew what SSA is before March 15th, we could adjust that, but then we have to have that public hearing. I believe we have to have it in the paper between March 5th and March 15th in order to have that public hearing on the 25th, so no more than 10, no less than 20 days. I don't know if this is really an unusual year. Sometimes it takes this long for whatever reason to set SSA, so that does become problematic for schools. So then that second public hearing, we can go ahead and have that on our regular board meeting night in April. So, and then again, as always, the Department of Management will typically, for Muscatine, that minor adjustments get made to the property tax rate, a few hundredths of a cent usually, because all of the property tax relief money that goes into the state, they can't determine what that is until all school districts have certified their budget. So for now, a lot of it is estimates. Okay. So this is the property tax statement, or an excerpt from the property tax statement as it relates to the school, okay? So it is going to have our meeting information on it, our current property tax levy, you see there at the bottom, all school funds. Remember, when you get your property tax statement, and our levy has 3 different levies in the total. We have general, PEPL, and management fund, and so that's what those dollar amounts are. And then the current tax rate, so the effective tax rate, that is, that's produced when, if you hold the current tax rate as is, but using next year's valuations, that's what the property effective tax rate would be. For whatever reason, that is part of the property tax statement. And then the proposed property tax with the proposed tax rate. And you can see there we have to have the date, time, location. We have to have our website on there. And then for reasons, and as we go through these slides, you'll see a big reason for our tax rate increase, declining enrollment, and budget guarantee makes up our property tax rate. And a few slides later on, I'll show you, exactly what that budget guarantee amount is.
And that's anything under 4.5% puts us on budget guarantee, correct?
That is correct. That's because of our enrollment, because the 2 sides of the formula, certified enrollment times district cost per pupil, it would have to be around 4 something. I think I might have said that in one of my.
4.5, but it was 4 last year, correct?
Yeah, yes.
But the option, the thought that it'll be 4.5 is slim to none.
Well, I would highly doubt that for next year, because they've already.
And then you're forced to take the budget guarantee?
It is highly recommended that a school board does not pass up that spending authority. And we can adjust the property tax rate at any time.
Right.
Over our overall property tax rate, yes. But that is spending authority we don't want to give up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You just can't get it back, correct?
That is correct.
Spending authority, you don't ever get it back.
Okay, that's really good. So, okay, you're learning. Here we go. The next slide. So this is an example of a rollback, okay? That's a big word. Recently, residential rollback, there's commercial property rollback and everything. This is just an example on a $100,000 valued home. The rollback for 24 was 54.65%, so your taxable value is only $54,650. So that rollback is changing in FY25 to 46.343. So now your taxable value is, again, assuming your assessed value didn't go up, right? It's being very simplified here. Is 46,343 is now your taxable value. So assessment limitation or rollback percentage calculates the taxable value of a property. Statewide taxation valuation for residential property is limited to 3% growth compared to the prior year. So I kind of read that as statewide, 3% growth in residential property.
And again, that's set by the state, that's not by the county.
That is
not by
correct.
the city. That is set by the state.
That
so
is
it's
correct.
affecting your county taxes, it's affecting your city taxes, and affecting the school taxes.
And I know there's some intricacies there with the commercial property tax too, where there's some flat amount that's taxed at the residential rate first, and then
Like
the rest.
First 150,000 or something.
Yep. And again, this doesn't talk about any, credits that people can apply for, such as homestead credit. So
Military.
military, correct. So the next slide here is just that example then of those 2 years, and you know, you're say the tax rate goes up $2 per $1,000. Well, you're essentially paying less in tax because your taxable value decreased. Okay, so now we're going to get into kind of a financial planning model that we use. It's a comprehensive financial planning model that this ISFIS organization helps us with. And, you know, it requires, you know, that, you know, we always need to be looking forward. I don't necessarily like 5 years out is really hard to do, in my opinion. 3 years out is a little bit better, but there's a lot of assumptions that we have to use. But the main thing to me is always being cognizant of our spending authority and where it's going, okay? So while projecting the status of all funds under the control of the district is important, the primary focus of this is projecting our tax rate for the next 5 years, projecting unspent authorized budget for the next 5 years. And I'll go over those assumptions that we're using for this. Okay. So here are some assumptions. We are using 2.5% SSA in our assumptions over the next 5 years. We're using an enrollment decline of around 50 to 55 students. So if you look back in history and saw what our enrollment has been doing, you know, this last year was probably one of the largest years since I've been here, 160. The year before that, it was 27, I think, or something like that. And then it's anywhere in between. I do believe that, you know, at some point in the future, it's going to level out. And we've been seeing the same number of kindergarten classes the last several years. We've been graduating larger classes, larger than our kindergarten, so that just makes common sense that our enrollment probably will go down. The last couple years, you know, we've had minimal fluctuation in open enrollment out and in, so our net effect hasn't hurt us that much. So that's, I guess, a positive, if you will. So enrollment, I think if you averaged out, maybe that's a little conservative, but that's okay. And then, you know, we use loss of miscellaneous income in FY25. We're very aware of over $4 million of federal money that we won't get next year. So we're kind of using a model. We're starting next year. We're going to get back to where, if you look back, you know, pre-COVID, what was our miscellaneous income? Well, it was around $3.5 million or so. So that's probably where we're going to end up, just looking through our miscellaneous income and knowing where that comes from. And then a 2% increase in property valuations. Again, if you went back into history and looked average-wise, but, you know, if we knew things like there's residential property development going on in Muscatine, we could make some assumptions about that, or you know, any sort of development, I guess, if it was significant enough too. So state SSA rate. So then we have the property valuations and tax rates. So there's two types of tax rates. The formula-driven tax rates, which are determined by the operation of the Iowa School Foundation formula and are automatically calculated. And then there's the policy ones where we have the authority to change. So management fund, we have the authority to change that tax rate just based on what we need. So there's no, I guess, limit to management fund levy, but, you know, we just take a look at that, or I try to take a look at what are our needs in the management fund over the next 2 to 3 years? Because our management fund expenses, if you look on this document, what are our management fund expenses? A majority of those we have to pay in July. So we need to make sure we cash flow the management fund. And then we know things such as early retirement. We know things like when those payments have to be made and such. And then we're basically making an estimate of what is our property casualty going to increase so that we can build that into our management fund levy. So that's that kind of example. Okay, so here's state supplementary assistance rates. This top part, you can see the history of SSA going back to FY19. So 3% is really the largest it's been in several years. I'm pretty sure we went through a couple years of 0% SSA there in the late 2010s probably. And then the bottom part just kind of shows our projection. So there's 2.5% being used in our growth rate. That is, our regular program district cost. And then there's different categorical funds which are listed there. Teacher salary supplement, that all goes to teacher salaries. Professional development is used for professional development in our district for teachers and nurses. Early intervention, that's used at the K2, 3 grade levels for teachers, salary and benefits. And then there are our teacher leadership program. So those historically have been given the same per pupil increase rate as regular program district cost. Okay. So here's an enrollment projection. Again, this is our certified enrollment for FY25 is projected to be 4,422.8. And if you remember where the 0.8 comes from, it has to do with a couple different things. We get weighted enrollment for homeschool assistance students. We get weighted enrollment for students taking community college courses. We get weighted enrollment for students with IEPs, for LEP. So those kinds of different weighted enrollments give us the 0.8, or that odd number, not a whole number. So decrease of 152, 3.3%. I think I went back and looked at 10 years ago in 2013 for fiscal year 15, our certified enrollment was approximately 5,344 students. I know in the past I've kind of given you the enrollment history going way back, but I just included what's in our projection here. But just wanted to point that out, 921 students down from 10 years ago. So there's where I was talking about open enrollment. You know, we have a net out open enrollment change, not by much. So that's, I guess, a positive, I would say. And then our enrollment served also dropped by 152 students. So the difference obviously is certified enrollment is all resident Muscatine Community School District students. Enrollment served is taking out the students going to other districts and adding students from other districts coming to Muscatine. And so this is just a summary then of those spending authority resources. Spending authority, if you look back at the definition for that and how important that is for Iowa Public Schools. So this just goes through those, the prior slide, regular program, and then those supplementary weightings for supplementary weighting, that is those community college weightings. We do have a shared guidance counselor with Muscatine Community College, and that generates 2 students, I guess, for funding purposes. So this is just the difference between FY23 and 24 you see there. So if you look at the first line regular program, $349,000, that was, we were not on budget guarantee last year because our decline in enrollment was minimal and we got the 3% SSA, okay? So you might hear, well, what was your district's new money? Well, it was $349,000. So technically that's the new money we had for our expenses next year. So this reviews our spending authority resources funded with property tax and state aid. Spending authority gives us access to spend even if we don't have the cash behind it. Well, what does that mean? Why spending authority is important. Not everybody pays property taxes that are supposed to, so we can't make that assumption. There are things such as across-the-board cuts. I was around in 2011 when this happened to Iowa public school districts, but we had a 10% across-the-board cut from the state of Iowa. They took cash away from schools. That didn't mean we did not have the authority to spend that. We had the authority to spend that, but they just took the cash from us. So how do we get that back? Tax or cash reserve levy, which we'll talk about too. And then there's things such as, the state will, every school district in Iowa will help pay for students going to juvenile homes that don't have a resident district. So we proportionately across the state of Iowa help pay for those. And I typically mention that in February, and I bet I did not this last month, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how much that is. It's I can't even begin to remember what that is, but we do get a reduction for that every year. We still get the authority, but the state's taking that cash to help pay for those students that don't have a resident district. And then, we have to cash reserve that money, okay? Same thinking with SPED and ELL. Every year I come to you, this is what we got in SPED, this is what we spent, this is what we received funding for ELL students, this is what we spent. So the other assumption comes with property valuations. So there's 2 important valuations. There's the property tax valuation we calculate for the general fund. And then the property tax valuation we calculate for PEPL, so the physical plant and equipment levy. We don't have a debt service levy because we have no general obligation debt. We just have sales tax revenue debt. But we don't have to have a tax for the debt, those debt payments. We have an instructional support levy. Those levies include TIF valuation. I don't claim to be an expert on TIF at all, but tax increment financing is important for the city, and property goes into TIF, and then that is not used for our general fund levy. So it does increase property tax rates for schools, but the benefit is the property tax overall for the community, okay? All right, so for FY25, our valuations decreased by about 0.8%. And so to fully calculate our property tax rate for each year of the 5-year projection, those are we have to estimate valuation growth, 2%, using 2% in this model. So the next slide then, this just is another continuation of property tax valuation. On the axis on the right is just says, I believe it's in millions of dollars, and then on the the left-hand side says millions of dollars, and the right-hand side is the valuation per pupil. So you can see there we are doing the trend line, obviously. We're not off base by using 2%, so I think we're good there. Property tax rates in Iowa are expressed in dollars per thousand of taxable valuation, and then it's calculated taking the rate multiplied by the taxable value of the property after credits dividing by 1,000. So, and then finally, property tax rates can be divided into two broad categories. We have the general fund. So that helps with the uniform levy, that additional levy. I'll talk about those two things, cash reserve levy and instructional support levy. And then there's non-general fund rates for that board and voter approved PEPL, the management fund levy, and then again, we don't have a debt service levy because we don't have general obligation bond debt. We have to pay sales tax revenue debt from sales tax revenue that we get. So the pretty little teal blue color on your chart is save money. So that money that comes in, we have to transfer it to that dark green fund to pay the principal and interest. And when you look on the financials that are presented monthly, you'll see there's a balance in the debt service fund. Well, that's monthly. We get sales tax revenue monthly. So I just take 1/12 of our principal and interest payment for that fiscal year, and I put it into the debt service fund just so it's there, and it's not in save, so we don't spend it on something. So we have it for debt service. So with here we go, one more slide. So our total property tax rate in this financial forecast, it is showing going up to around the 1361, okay? Mainly because the budget guarantee is 43 cents of that increase. So technically, if we weren't on budget guarantee, you can see our tax rate would continue to go down. Probably. So, if you look at our tax rate the last 5 years there, we have had a steady decline in our tax rate overall for many reasons. Maybe low SSA, declining enrollment, property tax relief also, because that's what I think the legislators talk about every year is how can we get more property tax relief out there. So there's that part of it too. So
Just looking at that, at the 1323 and jumping up to 1361, saying that, right now, we're saying it's the budget guarantee. Are there other levers you could pull to get that back down to 13.23?
So we're going to take a look at that.
Yep.
I have another slide coming up here, and I think it's the next slide.
Yep.
Okay, so this slide, hopefully you can see it pretty well. This is a comparison of the current year levies, what our levy would be at 0% and what our levy would be at 2.5%. Now, I didn't put out there 3 because I put this together the last couple days when all of a sudden 3% comes to the table. So I did not change this again. But this is a good example of showing you the different rates that make up our total levy rate. So if you look at the 1352, that's the 2.5%. The slide before did say 13.6, but I couldn't get, this 1352 is actually from our aid and levy document that I do. I couldn't get my financial planning model to match it exactly, but I pinpointed down where it was and I never got it. I didn't reach out to get an answer. So what I'm saying is this is what we would be working with at 2.5%. Look at the second line down, the budget guarantee. In fiscal year 24, we did not have one. In fiscal 25, we will. It's just, we don't know what it's going to be right now. If it's 0% SSA, it's 1.5 million in property tax. We could change that if we wanted to. Or it's going to be 665,000, or it'll be less than that even. So you could think about maybe half of that, and I didn't plug that number in. So then we have that at-risk MSA. We talked about that last week or last board meeting. That would be the same no matter what, 73 cents of our levy. Then there's that instructional support levy, and I have some slides coming up talking about the ISL. So what is that for Muscatine schools? That is, when it first got implemented, it was a 10-year voter-approved instructional support levy. So you can take 10% of your regular program district costs, so that $34 million figure right now, 10% of that, you can add that to your general fund for any general fund purpose. That's what our resolution says. Some districts may say it's for any general fund purpose except salary and benefits. Some levy or some revenue purpose statements for ISL might say something else, more specific. Muscatine's does not have anything except it's a general fund use. Okay. That, excuse me, that was set to expire. And the board renewed that with a 5-year board-approved instructional support levy maybe 3 years ago. And I think if you look at the calendar that comes out every month on the financials, I do put at the bottom when some important levies expire. And instructional support levy, I believe, is 2030 something, right? The early 2030s. So now, I said 10% regular program district costs, but this is one of those levies that technically isn't 10% because back when ISLs were started at the state level, they set aside X amount of dollars so that you had a property tax contribution, a state aid contribution, and then if you wanted to do an income surtax contribution. Ever since I've been in my job in 2000, the state has never came, maybe, I shouldn't say never, maybe they did the first in 2000 and 2001 and 2 maybe, but for many, many years, at the very end of the legislative session, that's something they slash and they don't contribute towards your instructional support levy. So technically we don't get 10% of our regular program district cost. Does that make sense? We get about 1.5 million less than what we could get if the state contributed their portion. So, instructional support levy, the property tax portion generates the 1.1 million. Our resolution says we will fund the instructional support levy by at least 1% income surtax. An income surtax is something that when we all do our taxes and we get down to that state liability, they ask you, well, what school district do you live in? And you say Muscatine. And so then all of a sudden it takes 1% of your liability and says, this is your income surtax. Okay? Now that's going to play an effect into property taxes in the future because of the state trying to change their tax tables and make it a flat tax, basically. And even today, you know, retirement income is not taxable anymore. That's a good thing. But that's going to affect property taxes for Muscatine, too, or in all public school districts if they have an income surtax. And I will mention that income surtax, because if you start going down this list, the next one down is cash reserve. So there is a few, and I'll say this now, but in the next few slides I talk about it and we'll go through it. But the cash reserve levy, there is a maximum that we can cash reserve. If we have 20% fund balance on our balance sheet, if 20% of our expenditures are more than that number, we can't do a cash reserve. Which is a good thing. We can't, you know, we're not a bank, et cetera. We don't want to like have, because of that concept of spending authority, there are some districts that have way more cash than they do authority. We would not want to be in that position. So we're in an okay position, and that is bumped up a little bit, but we can change that depending on what that final tax rate looks like. Then there's the management fund, and again, that is down a little bit. Now, the reason that that went down, we had enough built in for a potential increase in our property casualty. The other thing I looked at was early retirement payments. You know, we don't have one this year. We had some early retirement payments drop off at the end of this year, so that there was an adjustment there. Now, should the board decide to have one in the future, we just need to relook at that for FY26. And then there's the physical plant and equipment levy, very important levy, because that is also a place where we have for capital projects, for summer projects, look at this chart. What do we use it for? Buildings and grounds improvements, repairs. And repairs have to make something, repairing it to restore it to its original life. So it's not like your normal everyday stuff. A student kicks, you know, that's not the right word. You get a hole in a wall for some reason, and you have to repair it. You can't use pebble for that. That was I'm thinking of something that happened at home, maybe. So when you think of repair, you can think of, there's some equipment repair that you can take out of PEPL. You know, buses, we buy buses every year, vehicles. Technology, non-instructional software. Why non-instructional? I don't know, but that's the law. And leases, okay. That's what we use for PEPL. Property tax-wise, that's how much it's going to generate a year. And then there's two pieces. There's your board approved. You can approve or not approve that every year. Then there's the voter approved. That was a 10-year voter approved PEPL that expires, I believe, in 2030. So we keep it on that timeline to remind ourselves at what time do we need to start thinking about renewing that. And so that's a maximum of $1.34. We can lower that if we wanted to at any time, but we can't go more than $1.34. And then, of course, there's debt service, which we don't have one. So that's what makes up our property tax rate. Hopefully that answered your question, Matt, about different levies and then what do we have control over. Okay. So here's that uniform levy and additional levy. If you look on this, the back of your sheet, you'll know what that means by uniform levy. A 540, that's the 540 levy. Every school district in Iowa has a $5.40 levy, and then the additional levy is determined by the valuation characteristics of our school district, and it includes, things such as weightings for SPED, ELL, community college concurrent enrollment, dropout prevention, at risk, and of course the budget guarantee. Okay. So then the next slide would be talking about our cash reserve levy. I'm sorry, go back one. So here's the cash reserve levy, an annual property tax. The board sets it. There's no limit except of the 20%. And then the cash reserve levy provides funds to finance operations but does not provide additional spending authority. Okay, and this is our projection with our cash reserve levy. We've kind of, we're at that level right there, and then if we bump it up to that million, which it hasn't been that high for a while. Look in 2020 and 2021, we could not do a cash reserve levy because 20%, we had, our fund balance on our books was more than 20% of our expenditures for the prior year. So this is all looking back, 2 years ago, pretty much. In 2023 is what we're looking at for 2025. Our ISL, so that's that 10%, cash. We raise our spending authority by board action, which is our last one we did. We have the option, so our resolution does say we have to do at least 1% income surtax. So that's what Muscatine has done since the inception of this instructional support levy. And you can see there the amount of property tax that costs, okay? And then here's the management fund levy. And I have this spreadsheet that I use to look 3 years out to see what our needs are going to be, to make sure we don't have no cash on July 1st to pay what I think we're going to have to pay in July. And then our first quarter payments for early retirement are always due in July. So, we don't get our property tax. We get our property taxes just as we pay them. We pay them in September, so then schools get half of their property tax in October. We pay in March as residents, and then we get our property tax payment in April. So it's, there's timing we have to think about and all that fun stuff for cash flow. Okay. So then our physical plant equipment levy. Same, it's been the same since I've been here, funded by, it is not funded. You can fund income surtax with your voter PEPAL, but we do not in this district. So, and I don't think we could, but I don't believe it was in the language when it was passed. So let's look at some indicators. I know a couple times a year we talk about these. We're putting them into our projection. What do we look like in the next 5 years? Just to review, the solvency ratio is the fund balance of the general fund at the conclusion of the fiscal year. That's what it is. We have to take into consideration everything that we would owe for the fiscal year, and we have to take into consideration everything that is still due us at the end of the fiscal year. While it's an important measure from a cash flow perspective and may be important to rating agencies, we haven't had to have our financials rated in the past because we've never had debt, so I don't think it's been an issue. Well, now we will. We want to make sure we have a good rating to bond holders or people that want to buy our bonds, or investors, I should say. So it is not the measure used by the state to determine general fund financial health. Okay, it's not the measure, but it's good to have this because we want to make sure we have enough cash to run business in the summer, because that's really the time of year where we've received our last property tax payments in April. We receive our final 1/10 of state aid in June, but we still have July, August to get through. Paying teacher salary and benefits. I try to make sure you're aware of that when we show July and August financials. So, and here's the calculation, our assigned fund balance plus our unassigned. All the assigned means is at the end of the year, we do have some designated money that we haven't spent yet that has to be assigned to spend it for that purpose. Every building in our district has a donation assigned fund balance if they get donations for their building. We get certain grants that we don't spend, such as, well, I guess there's categorical money from the state of Iowa. Okay, teacher salary supplement, although that's usually close to zero. Professional development, tag money, homeschool assistance money. So those kind of things, we add those. I'm sorry, not the state money. It's the assigned and unassigned. The unassigned is that's the large number you see in our financials, divided by the general fund revenue, and we subtract AEA flow through. That becomes our solvency ratio. So what does that look like? So solvency ratio can be impacted by cash reserve levy, underfunding of state aid across the board cuts, that affects our cash. Property tax delinquencies or appeals, that affects our cash. And then if we reduce expenditures, that's going to affect our cash also. Projected solvency ratio, so you can see the first 2020 through 2023. And we do look like we're going to take a dip. Now we're going to be between that 5 and 15%. We've been above that 15%, but again, this is just going based on our assumptions, what our revenues and our expenditures are going to be, what our cash reserve levy, all those things. Obviously, those can be adjusted 4 or 5 years out. It's going to look different, so don't come back here in 5 years and say, Tom, you said. In 2028, our solvency ratio is going to be 7.8. It's not going to be 7.8, but right now, that's what we're projecting.
What's the biggest driver of that?
I'm sorry, what?
What's the biggest driver you see that's driving that down, besides a lack of ESSER dollars?
So the biggest driver is going to be those things that we're spending that we don't get revenue for. Special education, LEP. And then I believe those are the two biggest, I would say those are the two biggest drivers that, if we don't get, I can't tell you how much. I would have to look in our financials about the property taxes that we levied for versus what we actually get. That's in our financials. And then we have a driver that's called what I had mentioned earlier about having our cash taken from us to, that was a bad way to say that, a reduction in our state aid to help pay for those students that are in the juvenile homes, But you have, I think the last several years, between LEP and special education has affected that.
How soon can we be looking at that? Because like you said, you're calculated out, at least right now.
5 years.
Yeah, and so 6.7%.
And that's,
And I guess I'm so.
that's
you know,
still in the
used to-
acceptable range.
It's still acceptable
What I
range,
would
but we're so
do-
used to the 20%
And
in that, so,
right.
yeah.
And what I didn't do here is, I always know how much cash we're gonna need to get through June and July. And if that's starting to look like it's gonna go negative, then we're gonna be in a position where we have to borrow money in our general fund to get through June and July and August. And it's not as simple as going down to the bank and saying, hey, Midwest One Bank, we need to borrow money to get through July and August. You have to, it's basically you're securing debt with property taxes and state aid, and you're gonna go through legal documents, you're gonna have public hearings and so forth. I mean, it'll cost some money to do, and then there's gonna be the interest that we're gonna pay. So that's what would happen if it got below a certain point there, but I think always looking at our cash at the end of the year, knowing how much expenses we still have to pay. So, but like I said, I mean, $1 million, looking at our property tax rate, we have $1 million right now built in for a cash reserve levy. Maybe we're gonna bump it down because we think, for at least another year, we can get by and being cognizant of that property tax rate, okay? So then we have, okay, what's the other financial indicator? So I'm almost at an hour, so I'm gonna, okay, so the other financial indicator, unspent authorized budget. So represents the remaining spending authority of the general fund at the conclusion of the fiscal year. It's important that I'm talking about directors and such, making sure we're spending our authority that is generated in the year we receive it. Because that's what it's for. It's for this 23-24. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and there's been a couple years where it's increased by a lot. And then, if we see a trend where we're spending down that spending authority, it keeps going down. If we go down several years in a row, the DE likes to send out notifications to the president and the superintendent and the school business official saying, hey, yes, we do know, we don't want to be in a position where we have to have a workout plan. If we're negative, that would obviously be against the law, and then you do have to go through many, many hoops and hearings and such, and I don't mean public hearings here, I mean hearings at the Department of Ed. So the single most important general fund financial measure, and it is used by the School Budget Review Committee, that committee that you would go before, and the State Board of Education in evaluating a school district general fund financial position, is spending authority. You don't see the concept of spending authority in the financials because it's not like, it's unique to Iowa Public Schools, but I think it is helpful also, especially in, like, if you only had to spend the cash that you get, then that would not be a good thing. So.
Tom, I have
Yeah.
a quick question on this. I know it should not be the practice, as you said, but let's assume 1 year we end up with unspent authority. So what will happen? I mean, can you move that money forward to the next year?
It goes forward to the next, whatever you don't spend,
Yeah,
it rolls forward to the next year. And
so
you
it's
can-
not
and
something you
it
lose.
doesn't- You don't lose it until you use it, basically.
Okay.
Right?
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. Okay, so there I said, if a district's UAB, unspent authorized budget, falls below 0, the district will be subject to additional reporting and sanctions, up to and including mandatory closure. Anybody remember the district that closed because of unspent? Hedricks? Starts with an H. It's been since I've been in this business, but that does happen, so small school district. Okay, financial indicator, and here's a graph of our unspent balance. So from 2018 through 2023, and then projecting forward. And some assumptions used for this are, we know next year we're going to have some miscellaneous income that that we will not have. So we've already started planning on that, on that miscellaneous revenue that we're losing. And we've historically wanted to keep our UAB percentage between 5 and 15%. And salary and benefits are probably 80 to 82% of they are 80 to 82% of our general fund budget. Our general fund, so not the other funds. This is only a general fund concept. It's just the green part, the light green part. We've managed to stay in this range through not replacing staff that leave, to basically right-size our district. Other measures have included finding other funds for expenditures, such as non-instructional software. Our printer copier lease program used to come out of the general fund. Those are eligible PEPL expenditures. Participating in the Iowa Local Government Risk Pool for natural gas. I'll be bringing to you our renewal for that in March. And that is basically an insurance policy for natural gas. And that's an eligible management fund expenditure. We're part of a risk pool.
More actually about that media part where there have been talking about maybe getting that away after a couple years. Which funding would that be under?
So, I'm sorry, what media part?
So like for the AEA dollars,
Yes.
if those then came to the district, then we could, and we have flexibility, like where would they go?
What fund would it be in?
Yeah.
It'd be in the general fund.
Just for the general.
You may not know this now, but we record on our general fund the revenue that flows through to the AEA. And you'd see that in our financials, and I have that on our financials, but there is that flow-through money is what it's called. The money never hits our bank, but because the AEA is not a taxing entity, they can't show property tax revenue and all that jazz. So we record it, and every school district in the state records it, and then the state actually just sends it to the AEA. But we have to record the revenue and the expense. So it would be a general fund revenue. It'd be for general fund purposes. Yeah.
But at a point in time, if I've got it correctly, even some of that will be going down on how much that we actually receive from state?
Right now, the conversation, at least in the House bill, is those media dollars would stay at 100% of what they are now. They haven't talked about so the governor's original proposal eliminated them. What we're seeing from that House proposal is they would maintain those at the current levels. Now, how long that stays, that could be a conversation next year they're having. It's hard to say.
Right, thank you, that clarifies that well.
So another point with the our UAB and we were focusing mainly on FY25, and then going forward, this is a scenario if our expenditures stayed the same from 26 through 29. We have to keep our expenditures the same. So however we can do that, or however that looks like, but yeah. I mean, there's lots of considerations. There's raises for staff, there's insurance costs for staff, 2 huge things every year that we have to consider. So, all right. going to go on to budget guarantee. We're almost done here. So we've talked about this in the past. Every year we talk about this, and the regular program district budget adjustment or budget guarantee, it's a mechanism put in the finance formula to offset or delay the impact of declining enrollment. It's a year-to-year calculation which effectively says, does the combination of SSA, state supplemental aid, and our district's enrollment produce an increase in the regular program district budget or regular program budget of at least 1%? So it's taking that regular program budget, which is basically your budget enrollment times the district cost per pupil, is that 100% of that figure from 101% of that figure from last year, and that's what we're guaranteed. If not, the state will give the district the spending authority to get to the 1% growth for the upcoming fiscal year, and it's granted automatically and added solely to the additional property tax levy. So there's no state aid, it's all property tax. And this is just a little chart on how to calculate it. You know, we look at FY24 at 3%, FY25 right now is at 0%. Well, FY24 was 3% from the prior year is what that means. So then you can see that gray figure is that regular program district cost last year, and it looks at that figure for the taking the prior year. So this is the resolution that'll be on the board agenda for March 8th. We don't put a dollar figure in there. We just ask for the resolution to be approved without a dollar figure because we don't want it to be wrong when everything's said and done. Okay. I'm moving on to a couple updates on health and dental. If you remember, sorry, these are so small. This is the first slide is health insurance, self-funding health. And remember, every month you see the balance in our health and dental self-funding account, okay? This is showing the far right-hand column. It says 723 to 624. It's actually 723 to 1223. It's just the first 6 months of the current year, because that's all I have is July through December. Did not get a January's included here. So it's just showing you the claims and then the fixed costs, the claims experience, sorry, I really can't see this far, so I can't even see that far. Let's see if I can see this. Okay. Anyway, the last figure at the bottom, funded for projected claims, fixed costs. Okay, $1,055.87. And the line above it, or that's the per employee per month. And then it was projected that would be at $1,186. And then the claims fixed cost per, is that dark red there, are the figures that we need to look at and compare. And we kind of knew when we increased our rates for FY23, we were kind of using some of that fund balance that we had already accumulated the first 2 years on here. So there hasn't been any red flags to Clint and I about how we're performing. So the next page is dental. Looks a little bit different because dental isn't near the volume as health, so we're doing well on dental. This is our first year actually on dental. So we have had initial renewal conversations with Holmes Murphy. We're making some, we went out to bid on a pharmacy benefits manager. We're having a meeting this week with them to decide how we're going to go forward with that. And then we are bringing back the insurance committee then right after spring break so that we can bring to you in March or hopefully April. Probably more like April, sorry. The final rates. The tricky part is not only the rates, but we have to look at board employee contribution. Okay. That's what we're looking at. So, any questions on that?
Your insurance committee is the combination of like there's staff on it. That's what you're referencing. when you say that?
The health insurance committee
Yes.
is a committee made up of volunteers from, we try to get somebody from every group. Teacher group, there's usually somebody from MEA there, some classified professionals, custodial maintenance, there's a representative on there. So, yeah. So the next step then, March 18th, approved budget guarantee resolution. What is the consensus with March 25th? 5 o'clock? Does it matter? We need a majority of the board present, obviously. If it's not the 25th, is it going to be the 26th? But this is the special meeting, public hearing that we have to have for that initial property tax statement. Okay.
Whatever.
Okay. 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 I think, okay, 5 o'clock, March 25th, public hearing number 1. So, new law, okay? Don't know what to expect. It could be a 1-minute meeting, or it could be longer than that. Just depends, because every taxpayer in our district is going to get a statement with the public hearing notices of each entity, city, county, and school, to have input on what that tax rate is.
And we're going to show an increase.
And we're going to show an increase.
City's not. I don't know what the county's done
Okay.
yet, but I know the city we were able to do it without no tax
If
increase.
something changes between now and March 5th, so I have to get to the journal, I have to, well, actually, do I have to? Yeah, I have to do something. I'll have to do something to get to the journal, this notice, and I have to make sure they can get it in this window. But what happens if by the end of this, I just don't know. This is March 1st. Next week, 2nd, 3rd, 4th is Monday. The 5th is Tuesday. So having the public hearing, which is we can on the 25th, if something happens, I will change, that property tax statement, because it's law now that it's going to be 3% SSA or 2.5%. But we just don't know. But we can dial it back, as you heard in the video and as we've reported, by the time we actually certify. Now, what happens if they don't have SSA done by April 8th? Well, then I'm retiring. Kidding. No, that's not true. But it's happened before, and we've dealt with it. And so we'll do the best we can if
And
that's
Tom,
not done.
just for clarification, that hearing, that budget hearing is just a hearing. It's
Yep.
not discussion or
Yep.
debate. We do the
So-
3 minutes for anybody that wishes to
Yep.
speak, and you would just listen.
Yep.
And based on my experience, 9 years on the board, I mean, it's It
Could
goes
be,
quick,
yeah.
but no one knows.
Right.
I mean,
and it's,
we
and
might
again,
have.
it's just the unknown of
exactly.
the new law, opportunity, and that's why you can't have it on another meeting. You can have it on another meeting, but you just don't know how long it's going to take. So there's that. So then we'll do the public hearing number 2 or the regular certification on April 8th. Finalize health and dental rates before then and propose those to you. And then we'll amend the 24 budget because I'll be bringing to you information about that. A lot of it has to do with construction, the timing of the construction costs, you know, that's hard to predict, especially typically construction happens, you know, a lot happens in the summer. It's hard to predict how much is going to be done by fiscal year end. So there will be a budget amendment, not a big deal. It happens every year. It doesn't affect property tax rates. It's just that we have to make sure we're following the expenditure limits that we set April of last year. So, all right, so that's it. I appreciate your time. My office is downstairs. If you ever have any questions, I'm happy to meet with anybody. So you know how to get a hold of me. I'm available. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
That was very intensive information, right?
Yes. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Any question, last question for Tom before we move on?
Yep, and just appreciate it too, the amount of work, but, you know, just being part now on the city side and seeing what we went through. Saturday meetings, 8 hours a day for multiple Saturdays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday meetings a lot, but really getting in department by department, seeing the head count, seeing the activities, seeing, you know, over, you know, their request of $28 million to start with and over well over $2 million cut out of that budget to keep that tax rate the same. The county's going through the same activity too, and just how important it is to the citizens of Muscatine to do everything that we can to keep that tax rate flat. You know, it's a lot of work, but again, we also see some of those activities of our solvency ratio and all that going down in the next couple of years. So I think there's going to be more challenging conversations in the future to keep us in good shape. But appreciate everything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
And again, I want to thank Tom for all the work that he and his team do on this. I do think it's important to continue to look at those projections. You know, our enrollment is going to change from year to year. It's built on 2.5% SSA. We know we're not always going to get that. So if we get a little more this year, great, but we're going to be having the same conversation next year. And what does our enrollment look like? What's happening with state revenue? The other thing that's important to remember is when we talk about any of our settlements, we're required by law, when there's disagreement with your bargaining groups, by state law, it's 3% or CPI, whichever is lower. Well, we know what's been, you know, what our CPI has been doing over these, and including this year. So at 2.5% SSA, when we know we're getting 3% at least settlements, those are important conversations to continue, because sometimes our legislators forget that piece, that it is in code. That's how we work with those bargaining groups. So again, Tom does a great job in keeping all that information in front of you.
Thank you. So next item is second reading on policy 404.8, resignations. Anybody have any question about this? And as we always say, if you have anything about any policy, please connect with Daphne and have some discussion before we bring it through the third reading when we have to vote on that. So the next item is announcements, meetings, events. March 5th, Riverbend Food Pantry, 4 p.m. here at the district office on 2900 Mulberry. March 11 to 15, spring break, no school. I'm sure all our students will have great time and they are looking forward for that week. Because of spring break, our community conversation and school board will fall on the third Monday in March, which is March 18th. Community conversations at 5:30 here at the center or the district administration center. And then the school board meeting at 6:15 also at the district administration center. Anything else that anyone would like to add? Well, if not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second. Those of you who are in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Good night, everybody.